The arena was asleep when the first crack split its silence. No sunrise marked it. No herald blew a horn. It began as a vibration beneath reality itself. A deep, living hum that made the air quiver like the skin of a drum. Planets nearby dimmed, their orbits shivering under a pulse older than time. And then came the emerald light. It didn't descend. It erupted. A spear of green energy tore open the horizon, shredding stars like torn silk. The storm it carried wasn't wind, it was memory. The arena, a sentient structure made of impossible geometry, remembered that sound. The sound of something that existed to destroy. Through that wound stepped a man. He wasn't calm, nor cruel. He was simply alive too loudly. Every breath was an explosion trapped in skin. His hair, untamed and flickering emerald, blazed with the same rhythm as his pulse. Muscles coiled under flesh that glowed faintly with kai. Veins like molten rivers beneath a mountain of flesh. His eyes were not eyes. They were comets, caught mid-scream. He landed on the crystalline floor with enough force to fracture constellations. The arena groaned but did not collapse. Instead, its architecture reshaped, forming great spiraling ridges to absorb the shockwave. Above him, the fractured sky resealed, then cracked again, struggling to understand this anomaly of will. "Where am I?" Broly whispered. His voice wasn't a question, it was a challenge. The words triggered an immediate reaction. Around him, thousands of light pylons rose from the ground, humming with ethereal intelligence. A voice without a mouth answered, "Welcome, traveler. You have entered the arena of the impossible." The sentence echoed across dimensions. Every syllable carved itself into light. Broly tilted his head, nostrils flaring. The air here tasted different, sterile, perfect, wrong. "Another illusion," he muttered, remembering the endless simulations, the false battlegrounds, the gods who pretended to test him. His aura flared, stretching outward in shimmering waves that painted the atmosphere. The voice continued, unshaken. "The arena exists outside time. It calls only those whose existence breaks it." Broly clenched his fists, veins pulsing like lightning under skin. "Then it called the right one," he screamed. It wasn't a roar. It was the sound of a world remembering it could die. The green energy burst from his body in every direction, bending light itself. The shockwave split a moon in orbit, pulled it apart, and turned it into dust that spiraled like a halo over the arena's boundaries. When the light settled, Broly was hovering, no, suspended, in a sphere of raw ki so dense it vibrated with gravitational hums. His heart beat like a war drum made by gods who had grown bored of peace. The arena trembled. Then something moved within the fracture he had created. A fissure opened, not above, not below, but through space itself, like a mirror deciding to stop reflecting. Inside it, shapes moved, bones plated in iron, veins made of liquid carbon, eyes that glowed with red knowledge. The voice of the arena lowered to a reverent whisper. "Protocol, resurrection of the extinct prototype. Doomsday." The crack exploded outward. What emerged was not a creature. It was an argument between evolution and annihilation. Doomsday stepped onto the battlefield, the ground breaking beneath his feet, even though the arena had no mass to break. His entire form pulsed with brutal symmetry, every bone a weapon, every muscle a law of nature rewritten to kill. He looked up, locking eyes with Broly. For a moment, even the light seemed to hide. Broly grinned, baring teeth like a storm. "So that's what this place sent me." Doomsday didn't respond. He didn't need to. His roar was language, a growl older than reason, the vocabulary of extinction itself. The sound turned the surrounding glass planes to molten crystal. Then he moved. The impact was instant, impossible. The two collided midair, and the universe flinched. Their first strike birthed a sun between them, a white explosion that tore through the arena's topography, burning away its boundaries. For a second, they were silhouettes against infinity, gods outlined in the afterglow of creation. Broly was faster, but Doomsday was heavier. Every blow he took made him learn. The first punch cracked his jaw. The second didn't even bruise him. By the third, his skin had grown translucent armor, refracting the emerald energy back at its source. Broly snarled, uppercutting him through a mountain of solidified light. "You can adapt?" Doomsday lunged from the dust cloud, his fist like a comet, driving Broly deep into the earth. The impact left a crater that looked like an eye staring into eternity. He rose, laughing. Good. Green fire coiled around him, stretching skyward, forming wings of pure wrath. He vanished, not through speed but through decision, appearing behind Doomsday mid-thought, striking him with a blow that erased sound itself. The creature staggered. Bone fragments jutted, regrew, sharpened. He retaliated with a sweep that shattered the landmass, flipping the horizon. The arena adapted, reorienting gravity to keep them locked in combat. They fought in a silence too loud for mortals to hear. Each hit was a verse, each roar a chorus. Their violence composed a new religion. The air itself turned to color, green meeting crimson, blending into gold for brief flashes when their forces overlapped perfectly. From afar, they looked like gods sculpting galaxies with bare hands. Broly struck Doomsday across the jaw, then drove a knee into his abdomen. The impact detonated a shockwave that wrapped the planet, shredding atmosphere. The arena's core flickered, adapting, repairing faster than destruction could consume it. Doomsday's eyes glowed hotter. He absorbed the pressure, his form thickening, his bones darkening to obsidian black. Then he swung once, a lazy, brutal hook that connected square with Broly's chest. Broly coughed blood, then laughed. "You hit back!" He grabbed Doomsday by the throat and hurled him upward, through the stratosphere, into the void above. The chase followed instantly, Broly ascending with a comet trail of green flame. Beyond the edge of the arena, space itself responded, stars blinking, constellations rearranging to witness. When Broly caught him, their collision bent the visual fabric of the cosmos. Entire galaxies folded like paper cranes around the blast. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then, a ripple spread. An aurora spiral of emerald and crimson twisting together, painting the blackness like spilled oil. Inside the explosion, Broly's aura flickered. He was panting now, not from exhaustion, but exhilaration. This creature was different. It didn't fear him. It didn't stop. For the first time since his rebirth, Broly felt equal weight. Doomsday rose from the molten space, cracked armor reforming. His eyes burned with cold intelligence now, the first flicker of learning. His voice, unused for eternity, rumbled through vacuum. "You will teach me." Broly's grin sharpened into feral joy. Then, class is in session, he charged. The arena reassembled its atmosphere in time to witness the second impact. A spiral of force that split the entire sky into ribbons. Clouds of liquefied light poured down like rain. Every strike sounded like a bell tolling for universes. They fought until there was no ground, no up or down, only will. The arena, alive and watching, began recording their rhythm. Because this wasn't merely battle, it was birth. Two entities, one driven by instinct, the other by adaptation, meeting where physics bowed and stories learned humility. Their last exchange ripped a hole through the horizon, leaving only a floating ring of shattered matter, the skeleton of the world they had already killed twice. Broly stood breathing heavily, his aura settling like a cloak. His hair flickered between green and white. "You still standing?" Doomsday emerged from the dust, his body charred, bones glowing red like a furnace. He tilted his head, mimicking Broly's stance exactly. Broly blinked. "You're copying me now?" The creature growled low, a perfect mirror of Broly's tone. The Saiyan's smile faded into fascination. "So that's how you evolve." The wind howled, the arena's geometry shifting again. Lightning coiled around its edges, resonating with both of their pulses. The voice of the continuum whispered faintly, audible only to the stones. "Balance is broken. Chaos has rhythm again." Broly raised his fist. "Then let's see who keeps the beat longer." The two vanished, not in speed, but in refusal to exist within frames. Their collision was light, color and willpower turned liquid, painting the heavens with the shape of wrath. And as their silhouettes vanished into the storm, the arena whispered its prophecy for the next verse. "Where the world breaker meets the prototype, the rhythm of destruction will awaken a god." The arena learned their names before either would say them. It learned by the weight of their footsteps. One foot fell like a verdict that hated hesitation, the other like a question that refused to be wrong. The sky, still torn from their first exchange, wore a seam of green fire stitched with red embers. Across that wound, the wind gathered itself and chose to blow in circles, as if the world had decided to become a drum. Doomsday moved first, not by instinct but by instruction, written into his marrow by 1,000 previous deaths. He had been killed by suns. He had been buried in the contempt of gods. He had awakened under oceans and deserts and the indifference of time. Each failure returned to him as architecture, plates of bone, spurs of rage, ligaments braided from the memory that pain is a teacher that refuses to retire. He began to study. Broly felt the change. He didn't have words for it. Words were furniture, and he was an earthquake. But the body knows what language pretends to forget. The creature's weight altered the air. His stance revised itself. Even his roar adjusted pitch, as if the throat had learned the acoustics of this particular sky. Broly smiled as only someone born to be outnumbered by himself can smile. "Good," he said, because victory bored him, but escalation did not. They collided again. The second clash didn't sound like thunder. It sounded like armor learning to agree with muscle. Doomsday's fist met Broly's palm with a force that disobeyed arithmetic. The pressure crushed atmosphere into a plate of glass that shattered upward into rings, each ring carrying the color of one of Broly's old scars. Doomsday inhaled those colors like nourishment. They soaked into his bones and his silhouette thickened. Broly blurred from sight, reappearing behind the creature, elbow already descending. Doomsday's spine split, then resealed with a new seam. Extra vertebrae groaned between seeing the strike and receiving it. The elbow landed. The adjustment blunted it by half. The ground took the remainder like a confession it had expected. "You learn between heartbeats," Broly said, more to himself than to the monster. Then I'll give you less time. He vanished and returned in the same instant, a green arc carving a horizon out of the air. Doomsday met it with a forearm that hadn't existed a moment ago, a ridge of obsidian bone with the slope of a rampart. The arc tore across it, detonated, threw black shards outward like thrown teeth. Those teeth rooted themselves where they landed, sprouting brief, ugly spines before dissolving into dust. The arena absorbed the dust, tasted it, and wrote a note in the ledger only it could read. Adaptation, prime engaged. Broly's aura climbed a new octave. The light around him changed temperature, from furnace to flare, from storm to starfall. He drove forward, not as a fighter, but as weather choosing a direction. Doomsday braced, then, without the courtesy of transition, stepped through the blow, shoulder first, the way a planet accepts a comet. Broly's punch traced the outline of the monster's neck, left a groove of incandescent hatred, and still failed to remove the head. Doomsday's counter came late in the sentence but early in the breath. A backhand heavy enough to conclude a moon. Broly ducked, smiling, and the blow shaved a ridge of mountain from the arena's changing skin. That ridge shattered in a spiral, rising into the air as a staircase of luminous gravel. Doomsday leapt into the stairs as they formed, using the debris of failure as leverage. The creature touched down behind Broly and reached to close two hands, the size of fortresses, around the Scion's throat. Broly bent backward in a motion that would have broken a lesser spine and did not even ask his to comment. He planted both palms on the ground and kicked upward with the laughter of a tidal wave. He met Doomsday's wrist with his heel, then used the recoil to twist, then stood, then threw the world. The arena turned with him, an entire continent swiveling so that Doomsday took the brunt of the rotation. The monster slid, gouging trenches that filled with liquid light as soon as they formed. He dug in with bone talons the length of towers, and the floor ripped but did not surrender him. The two stood facing each other at the center of a freshly invented geography. A map as aggressive as its inhabitants. The voice of the arena spoke barely above the hiss of settling glass. Observation. Prototype acquiring rhythm. Counterpoint required. Broly grunted. He didn't know what counterpoint was. He knew what it felt like when a song refused to stay in one key. He pulled his breath inward until even the wind leaned closer. Then he exhaled in a spiral. Chakra was not his word, but it was the nearest the cosmos had. Green ki wound around itself like a double helix, climbing a staircase that had decided to be infinite. It wrapped his forearms, his calves, the line of his jaw. He looked less like a man, and more like the memory a comet has of being born. He vanished again, but it wasn't speed. It was decision. Doomsday turned to guard his back and found Broly already there, because back is a courtesy direction, extends to those who need it. The punch landed just forward of the shoulder blade. Bone erupted, the creature's torso dented. The second punch landed inside the first dent, and the dent became an argument. The third found the exact center between those two. No tell, no wind-up, just inevitability. And something within Doomsday failed. He stumbled. It was small, an earthquake measured in eyelashes, but it was failure, and the arena wrote it down, and the world learned a new way to be hopeful. Broly stepped in, closed both hands around the crown of Doomsday's head, and drove. The monster's knees found the floor hard enough to make prayer look natural. The Scion's aura climbed again. His muscles coiled for the throw that would erase an era. The throw did not happen. Doomsday's chest tore along a seam no eye could see. A new limb burst forward, a lance of bone wrapped in ruthless tendon, stabbing up through the space Broly's throat had been about to pass through. Broly's body reacted before he knew why. He released, twisted, and the lance shaved the edge of his jaw, carving a scream from the air rather than from him. He landed away, one hand to his face, laughing in outrage and delight. "You learned anticipation," he said, as if congratulating a student on finding the letter after the alphabet had ended. Doomsday stood, the extra limb retracted, reformatted, and returned to his chest as if embarrassed to be seen. The rents in his bone plates closed with a sound like paper forgiving a crease. The creature inhaled and exhaled and tasted his own improvement. He looked at Broly and tilted his head in a mirror-tilted imitation of the Saiyan's stance from minutes ago. Broly's eyes narrowed. "Not just body, me." The monster moved like Broly did when Broly was hungry. He lunged not at the torso but at the center of balance plus a margin of insult. Broly answered with a parry he had invented when he was young, and gravity wore a different face. Doomsday had the reply ready. The fist slid past the block, converted to a grab, and yanked. Broly stumbled for the first time, a stutter of the foot, a fraction of a heartbeat in which perfection had to blink. Doomsday did not punish the stumble, he recorded it. His eyes flared and the plates along his arms changed angle by degrees so small only math would notice. Armor became instruction set, instruction became rule, rule became habit. He smiled, but the expression was wrong, on a skull built for verdicts. It looked like a wound, remembering it had once been a mouth. The arena brought the choir. Columns rose. Sound made visible. Pillars woven from sustained notes that remembered cathedrals. They circled the combatants, humming a lattice that stabilized physics, establishing a key, the way a conductor taps the lectern before a symphony remembers that players are part of a country called together. Doomsday struck one column with his shoulder. It sang higher and did not break. Broly struck another with his forearm while parrying a claw, and the column sang lower and held. The lattice altered the fight. Edges softened. Distances declared themselves. The air's slipperiness reduced. Broly understood none of that and all of it. The humming gave his fury a grid. He stepped into it as one steps into a dance, invented by a culture that believes rhythm is how survival introduces itself. He began to fight in measures: left, right, body, breath, step, torque, impact, rebound. The pattern rotated every third strike. The power climbed every second rotation. The angle of the fourth entry in each sequence changed by a fraction until he arrived at a line. Doomsday couldn't quite fold into himself fast enough. The first such blow landed behind the creature's ear. The second landed at the hinge of the jaw. The third landed at the sternum. And the choir sang in sympathy, and the lattice brightened like 100 stained glass windows admitting noon. Doomsday learned, because that is what he is. But for the first time, his learning fell a half-beat behind the music. His counters came true, but late. His armor rose, correct but unpunctual. He missed the bus that was a fist, and arrived on time to meet the echo. Broly felt it and leaned in. His fury did not shrink. It gained grace. The green halo around him bled white at the edge, the color of heat forgiven by its own temperature. He did not scream. Screaming was for when the body was forced to speak for the mind. He breathed, a long, measured sound you could mistake for the ocean remembering where to be shoreline. The hands that had been meteors became instruments. Fist spirals into open palm becomes hook becomes lift becomes throw, that does not throw because the throw was bait for the knee. Knee lands, elbow follows, rotate, step through, shoulder checks the air. Kick repeats the elbow's argument, but in a language the ribs understand. The dance wrote itself along the lattice, and the lattice held because even miracles crave rules. Doomsday bled light. He didn't know how to do that. The function was new, and therefore offensive. The blood fell as beads of molten red glass that cooled in the time they took to fall and struck the floor as little bells. Each bell note taught the choir a consonant it had never pronounced. The circle hummed back at the monster, translating pain into invitation. Broly saw the beads, heard the bells, and chose the note they suggested. He stepped into the next measure and withheld the power that belonged there. His rhythm demanded thunder. He gave it rain. Doomsday's counters rose to meet the thunder that did not arrive and left an opening polished to a shine. Broly placed a gentle palm in that space, then allowed the rest of his strength to arrive late, as if politely. The delayed force traveled through the gentle palm, like a story that has learned patience, entered Doomsday's sternum, and asked it a question the architecture could not answer. The monster buckled. His spine did not break, but he forgot how to carry it for half a breath. Broly stepped in with the compassion of a hammer. Another delayed strike, another wrong-footed adaptation, another note added to the bell choir rhythm that turned violence into liturgy. The arena's voice returned, almost pleased. Counterpoint established, prototype lag detected. Doomsday snarled and did a brilliant, stupid thing. He stopped learning. He stopped translating pain into policy. He unlearned the counters he had built over the last minutes and reached for the first teacher he had ever known. No. He took the next blow with no adjustment and let it break what it would. He took the next again. He took the third and sank to one knee and chose not to remember the solution. The choir's lattice flickered, uncertain, because music expects rehearsal and was being handed refusal. Broly paused, the raised fist considering the wisdom of forward. The monster looked up from his knee. The eyes that had been red the way rage is red changed shade by the distance a sunrise changes between a shout and a promise. He breathed out, a sound like a glacier learning to cry, and said one word in a language that would rust if left outside. Again, Broly obliged. The strike fell. Doomsday did not adapt. He absorbed. The next fell, and the next and the next. Each wound taught him nothing, and therefore taught him everything. He remembered not the counter but the cause, the music that had made him late. He listened the way an avalanche listens to the mountain it will betray. He rose without healing and walked into the line of the next measure and allowed himself to be moved by it until the measure realized it had been joined by an instrument with no fretboard. His next punch did not refute the rhythm. It found the rest between beats and filled it. The blow landed not on Broly, but on the idea that the next note belonged to him. It knocked time sideways. Broly's foot landed where the frame had expected his hip. The Saiyan blinked as if sweat had fallen into his eye from an angle that did not exist. Doomsday had learned the song not by memorizing it, but by surrendering to it. Adaptation broke its habit and found faith. Broly exhaled a laugh that tasted like respect. "You're good." They met again. this time not as collisions but as first chairs entering the same movement. The choir raised its pitch to hold the suddenly shared burden. The columns thickened. The sky lowered so that it could hear better. Every strike arrived with a harmony. Every block returned a chord. The floor bore the scuff marks of 100 mortal wars, and understood it was being allowed to matter. The monster drove Broly back 2 steps across the lattice. The scion answered with a spin that returned them to center. The monster reached for the throat. The scion accepted the grip and converted it into a wrist lock that would have been an ending if the joint had believed in anatomy. Doomsday's wrist refused. It became a hinge. The lock became an old story no longer in print. Broly's knee came up. It met a rib that had already turned to arch. The arch carried the knee across its curve and returned it as footfall. The emerald light climbed and shed its green. For a sliver of a second, Broly looked like he had been carved from white fire and given the right to regret later. He struck with that forgiveness and sent Doomsday skidding backward with a wake like a glacier dragged across sheet music. The arena inhaled. Protocol notice, threshold approach. If reached, intervention required. The choir dimmed as if embarrassed. Broly rolled his shoulders. His hair flickered between emerald and a paler, crueler brilliance. He stood straighter. His breath settled. He placed his feet as if remembering a master who had never existed and therefore must have been the body itself. When he spoke, his voice had stopped being a storm and had become a blade that refuses to rust because rust would be impolite. "Round 3, he said. No more mistakes." Doomsday answered without tongue. His chest opened again and released not a weapon, but a wave. It wasn't energy. It was permission. The wave flowed across the lattice and told reality that it would be forgiven for failing to keep up. The columns moaned, and the wind knelt, and the floor rolled a shoulder to relax the tension it didn't know it had. Broly stepped into that mercy and burned brighter for being allowed to. They came together. The first exchange erased a ridge that had taken the arena a century to remember. The second threw both into the air where there was no purchase and created a purchase there so that their feet could remain honest. The third stopped time long enough for anyone watching from an old universe to decide to believe in music again. Doomsday reached for the rest again, the place between Broly's beats. Broly smiled and skipped. The measure changed. The rest moved. Doomsday's fist found a ghost. Broly's elbow found the present. The blow landed, and the monster sagged, and the choir exhaled relief in a minor key that tastes like blood and chapelwood. The monster did not fall. He planted one foot. The bone there grew deeper roots. He lifted his head. New plates ratcheted into place, subtle, not the crude hedgehog armor of earlier arrogance. This was careful work. This was a craftsman conceding that art exists. "Teach me," he said, and the phrase did not ask permission so much as state a curriculum. Broly nodded once, as if agreeing to a sparring partner rather than a war. He slid his left foot a handspan, altered his shoulders, and conducted the air with one palm. The lattice shifted in sympathy. The measure changed time signatures. Doomsday stepped after it and did not stumble. For several heartbeats, they were almost beautiful. The arena forgot its caution and loved them. It loved the violence because the violence had found its manners. It loved the way power stopped pretending to be a god and became a conversation. It loved that both monsters had graduated into musicians. It loved that the song could end and the world not collapse in resentment which is why it did not notice the cost until too late. Each adaptation Doomsday allowed to bloom now drew power from elsewhere. The elsewhere was space that other worlds were using. Stars dimmed 2 degrees. Tides in patient oceans rose a sigh too high. 3 children on 3 different planets paused mid-laugh and forgot the joke. Fuel is fuel. Broly felt the theft like the ache behind his sternum that arrives the day after victory and the hour before shame. His eyes hardened. He brought his hand down as if to say, "No further." The blow that followed was not the strongest he had ever thrown. It was the truest. It reached the center of the thing that called itself extinction and knocked upon it the way a knuckle knocks upon an altar it does not fear. Doomsday staggered and for one breath went still. The choir dared a note of rest. The arena took a breath that sounded like enough. Broly lowered his hands. Doomsday blinked. The stillness broke with a sound like a birth that refused to be predicted. He came forward, not angrier, not larger, simpler. All the extra plates retracted. The extra limb returned to bone dust. The furnace glow dimmed. What remained was a silhouette drawn with a single stroke by a hand that had perfected its line. The prototype of extinction had found its minimalist faith. He struck. Broly met the blow and tasted the end of a certain kind of fight. The fist wasn't heavy, it was inevitable. It arrived in the space that exists, after choices are counted and before consequences wave from the porch. The impact punched him across a span of world and left a furrow that reflected the stars with the accurate contempt of a mirror that has seen too much vanity. He stood, shook off the ache, and laughed like cliffs are allowed to when the tide finally says sorry. "Good," he said again, and the word made a covenant. "Then let's stop teaching. Let's sing." The monster nodded, because consent was the only theology that made sense in this place now. They advanced. The choir raised its hands. The arena prepared its mercy. Far above, somewhere beyond permission and law, a line wrote itself into the ledger of a universe that had never met humility and was learning. When instinct meets extinction and both agree to rhythm, the song becomes law. The crack of their next collision wrote the title of the coming verse in letters of white fire along the horizon. Shockwave Genesis. The arena no longer had edges, it had rhythm. Where walls had once divided dimensions, there were now only waves. Emerald and crimson folding into each other like breath and heartbeat. Each clash between Broly and Doomsday had rewritten the rules that kept reality stable. Gravity forgot its manners, color began to bleed from one hue to another, and the light coming off their bodies no longer knew how to decide between being lightning or song. The two beings floated in the center of this slow-motion storm. Two silhouettes painted in oil and wrath. Broly's aura flared green-white, each pulse expanding like the lungs of a newborn star. Doomsday's skin had become a map of bone ridges and red glowing arteries that pulsed in perfect time with Broly's heartbeat. The voice of the arena spoke softly, almost as though it feared interrupting the creation it was witnessing. The third verse begins. Force has learned harmony. Creation braces for aftershocks. Broly grinned through the wind. His laughter came out as light. Then let's see how much harmony the universe can take. He vanished, not by speed, by will. The space between two thoughts became a battlefield. He appeared behind Doomsday, his fist already cocked back, wrapped in plasma and fury. The impact came like a sunrise remembering its duty, silent first then total. The blast folded Doomsday's body inward and hurled him into the storm. Doomsday rolled through the chaos, the flames scarring him in patterns that resembled constellations. He landed upside down, righted himself, and looked at his chest. The flesh was gone. The armor cracked. Through the wound, light glowed, not blood, but an evolving engine. He roared, not in pain but in completion. Every fragment of energy that touched him became blueprint. Every wound translated to instruction. The crimson glow spread through his veins, burning like molten algorithms. Broly stopped midair, hovering, sensing the shift. His instincts whispered, "Something new is being born." And they were right. Doomsday looked up. His eyes, twin red comets, burned with learning. He flexed his hand. Where his claws had shattered, new ones grew, crystalline, reflecting the green light of Broly's aura. His body no longer rejected the energy, it mirrored it. The arena pulsed. The continuum whispered, "Adaptation, symmetry achieved." Broly clenched his jaw. "Copy me and die like me." He charged again, tearing a trail of emerald light through the void. Doomsday met him mid-flight, fist for fist, each strike fracturing the concept of space. The collisions birthed phenomena. Every time their fists met, a shock sphere appeared. Micro suns blooming, burning, collapsing. The shock waves rolled outward in concentric circles, forming rings that layered the cosmos like ripples in a divine pond. Mountains of light rose and crumbled within seconds. The sound they made could not exist in air. It resonated directly through consciousness. Far above, the constellations watched and began to move. They rearranged themselves into spirals, forming the first sigil of a new physics. The universe, it seemed, wanted to help them fight. Doomsday lunged, his motion smoother than before. The brute savagery had become precision, his fists slicing through the storm with rhythm. Broly blocked 1, 2, 3 blows, then caught the fourth, only to feel Doomsday twist his wrist in the same way he had done in the previous chapter. The creature had memorized the counter. Broly growled, "You're learning faster than I'm breaking you." Doomsday's mouth twisted into something that wanted to be a smile, but forgot what joy meant. Good. They hit each other again. So hard that planets formed and died in the blast radius. From the detonation rose a sphere of pure energy, swirling like a star forming in the belly of a storm. Inside that light, their silhouettes danced, not enemies, not allies, but two definitions of power debating existence through violence. Broly's hair whipped in all directions, white flame overtaking green. His eyes glowed pure jade, reflections of chaos in control. Doomsday, in turn, glowed crimson like magma, remembering how to love gravity. When they collided once more, their auras fused. Green and red became gold. The color did not belong to either of them. It belonged to the arena, the byproduct of two contradictions forced into agreement. The sky cracked like a painting drying too fast, fissures spreading across creation. Lightning rained sideways. Oceans of energy formed above them, then fell as liquid aurora. The arena screamed, not in pain but in birth. The continuum's voice trembled. Shockwave genesis detected, new laws being written. The battlefield had become a womb. Every impact now seeded new phenomena. Mountains grew where no ground existed. Rivers of raw light ran upward, defying gravity because gravity had stopped insisting. Creatures flickered in and out of being, half-thought beings made of the echoes of punches, living one breath and dying in the next. Broly and Doomsday fought within this newborn world, like titans shaping their myth by accident. Broly punched, and a canyon formed. Doomsday struck, and a volcano of color erupted. Their duel had stopped destroying. It was creating. Broly noticed it first. The world's fighting with us. The arena answered through the vibration of his bones. You are writing it. He gritted his teeth, sweat steaming off his skin. Then I'll make it beautiful. His ki exploded outward in spirals, shaping the chaos into a pattern. A rhythm that the new world followed. The shockwaves began to pulse in sync with his heartbeat again. But Doomsday was no longer simply reacting. He was listening. Each beat, each vibration, each surge. The monster absorbed them, recreating Broly's rhythm half a second faster. The crimson glow pulsed in sync, then overtook it. Broly's heart skipped a beat. He realized the truth. Doomsday wasn't copying him anymore. He was leading. The next shockwave came from Doomsday. A single punch rippled outward and split the newly formed world into halves. One emerald, one red. The color line extended beyond the arena, carving a scar across reality itself. Broly steadied himself, aura flickering under pressure. He snarled, gathering ki. You think you can outpace me? He unleashed everything. The result was soundless. A burst so vast it extinguished the idea of distance. The explosion painted the void white, then erased it. Both fighters vanished into the brightness. For a few seconds, there was only the hum of creation and the faint crackle of light recomposing itself. Then silence broke. Through the veil of burned space, a shadow emerged. Doomsday stepped forward, armor cracked, bones glowing white-hot. The red glow had dimmed. It was now burned to gold. He looked at his own hand, then at Broly, hovering in the sky, panting, blood trickling down his temple but smiling like victory's ghost. The monster tilted his head. This power. Broly's aura flared again. It's not power, it's rage with purpose. Doomsday nodded, not understanding, but accepting. Then purpose must evolve. His body began to hum. The frequencies of the arena's song passed through him, twisting his form. Bone plates rearranged into hexagonal symmetry. Muscle fibers split and multiplied. The glow inside him stabilized into a lattice of golden red veins. Broly's smile faded. He's adapting to energy forms now. The continuum confirmed, its tone laced with awe. The prototype's evolution rate has surpassed recorded causality. Warning, timeline instability rising. Broly clenched his fists. Then let's tear the timeline down too. He launched himself forward, breaking every sound barrier left. Doomsday caught him, their fists locking, neither advancing, both amplifying. The impact became constant. A singular note filled the universe, too perfect to be sound, too infinite to end. Around them, the world of their making began to vibrate at resonance. The newborn seas boiled into auroras. The mountains became instruments of thunder. Stars blinked to their rhythm. It was no longer battle, it was cosmic percussion. Broly roared, emerald white flames consuming his form until he became a comet of will. Doomsday roared back, golden red energy flaring like magma under divine command. They met again, once, twice, 100 times in a single breath. Each collision created a rhythm, faster, louder, older. The continuum trembled, shockwave sequence escalating. The arena cannot contain the Genesis field. The ground split beneath them. Energy geysers erupted skyward, painting galaxies across the void. The arena's crystalline surface cracked and rebuilt itself in infinite recursion. Broly slammed his fists together, charging ki until the air turned into blades of light. You want creation? Then choke on it. He fired a blast straight into the center of Doomsday's chest. The beam pierced through. But instead of obliterating him, it split into dozens of branches, refracting like light through glass. Each branch turned into a duplicate shockwave, all golden red, all Doomsdays. Broly's eyes widened. He used my attack to multiply his own. The waves hit him, folding him into the storm. The emerald comet disappeared inside the gold. The arena dimmed. The continuum's voice cracked with static. Containment compromised. The energy mass expanded, swallowing half the sky. And then, from inside the light, a scream. It wasn't pain, it was arrival. Broly erupted from the storm, eyes blazing white, hair shifting between green and silver. The ki around him became pure plasma, burning without color, beyond emerald, beyond rage. He rose, breathing heavily but smiling. You learn fast, monster, but I'm still teaching. Doomsday turned toward him, every plate of bone humming like a drumhead. Then finish the lesson. The two launched again. And this time, the impact didn't create light. It deleted it. For a moment, the universe went black. And in that blackness, new constellations flickered, not of stars, but of memory. The arena whispered, its voice barely holding shape. Third verse complete. Genesis achieved. The gods will envy what comes next. As the darkness cleared, both warriors hovered opposite each other, battered, glowing, and silent. Broly clenched his fists, green and silver energy rippling across his arms. Now you're starting to make this fun. Doomsday's chest pulsed with molten gold. Fun is another word for extinction. The stars trembled, awaiting the next beat. And far beyond the broken sky, the continuum wrote its next prophecy. Where creation sings, extinction learns to dance. The universe was running out of rhythm. The storms had calmed to a stillness too bright to be peace. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, afraid to exhale, lest the sound undo creation again. The shock waves from the previous battle hung frozen, shimmering walls of light that no longer moved, but remembered movement. Broly and Doomsday hovered at the center of that arrested world, two silhouettes carved from contradiction. Broly's hair hung wild, flickering between emerald and white. Doomsday's body pulsed like a machine that had learned to dream. Between them stretched a silence that carried weight. The silence of gods, pausing between verses. The arena itself began to flicker. Its surface broke into tessellations of crystal and fire, alternating between solid and imagined. The continuum's voice whispered, fragmented through static and awe. The fourth verse begins. Control and instinct are converging. Prepare containment or reverence. Broly tilted his head, sweat steaming from his temples, a grin growing sharp across his face. You can feel it too, can't you, he said. Not to Doomsday, not even to the arena, but to the power roaring behind his ribs. The edge, the limit that wants to be broken. Doomsday's reply came not as language, but as resonance, a deep hum that made the sky ripple. He stepped forward, each movement recalibrating his anatomy. The bones along his arms folded inward, then spread again like blades learning to breathe. His crimson glow began to dim, shifting towards the faint hue of dying stars. Broly exhaled and spread his arms wide. Come on, monster. Let's find out which one of us stops first. Then the storm returned. The first punch split the horizon. The second twisted time enough for dawn and dusk to trade places. By the third, both warriors had vanished into a cyclone of color, so violent that light itself was forced to choose a side. Each blow rewrote the shape of the battlefield. The arena bled energy, rivers of glowing plasma cutting through floating continents of shattered glass. Volcanoes of starlight erupted and fell upward. Even the continuum, watching from beyond the laws it had written, began to tremble. Containment threshold breached, consciousness overload imminent. Broly didn't hear it. He couldn't. His heartbeat had become a drum too loud for words. Every time Doomsday struck, Broly's body answered without asking permission. His muscles moved before thought arrived, like instinct had decided that the mind was too slow for survival. He dodged a hammering blow that could have leveled an age, then countered with a strike that looked less like violence and more like poetry written in flame. Each motion became cleaner, simpler, fury distilled into form. Doomsday noticed. He hesitated. For the first time, his adaptation failed to predict. Broly was no longer thinking the fight, he was being it. The continuum's voice cracked through the storm. Instinct unbound. He has entered the rhythm of existence itself. The arena responded, pulling itself apart into concentric rings that rotated like gears of a divine clock. Every ring carried fragments of galaxies, oceans, moons, deserts, the skeletons of old gods, all orbiting the two combatants, as though watching the first lesson of creation. Broly blurred through the air, every motion dragging a trail of color that folded and refolded behind him. He struck Doomsday again and again, but his face remained calm, almost serene. His anger had transcended rage. It had become clarity. He blocked a blow from Doomsday's claw, pivoted and drove a palm strike into the creature's chest. The impact turned the monster's armor transparent for an instant, exposing the heart that wasn't a heart, but a sphere of burning code. Doomsday stumbled backward, confusion flickering in his movements. His body tried to adapt, but found nothing to mimic. Broly wasn't following any pattern that could be learned. He had become improvisation itself, pure instinct, pure freedom. He floated higher, glowing brighter. "You can't copy what doesn't think," he said quietly. "You can only feel it." He vanished and reappeared behind Doomsday, fist already in motion. The strike landed, not with thunder, but with silence. The energy that followed didn't explode, it simply erased. Doomsday's right arm disintegrated into particles of golden dust, dissolving like a dream at sunrise. The arena trembled. Entire continents folded into the void. Doomsday roared, stumbling, half his body flickering between solid and spectral. The roar wasn't rage, it was disbelief. He remembered how to evolve, but memory had no instructions for what he faced now. Broly descended slowly, aura calm, but burning hotter than stars. His eyes glowed pure white. "This is instinct without anger," he said. "The power that doesn't shout." He raised one hand, gathering energy. A sphere of white-green light formed in his palm. Not wild like his usual blasts, but perfect, symmetrical, pulsing to the beat of his heart. "This is what happens," he whispered. "When wrath learns peace." He released it. The beam struck Doomsday square in the chest. There was no explosion, only light expanding outward, filling the arena with silence and gravity and prayer. The continuum's sensors failed to categorize it. New frequency detected, unknown. Divine? When the light faded, Doomsday still stood, barely. His armor was gone. His body was cracked, molten, raw. He fell to one knee, eyes dimming. For the first time in his existence, he bled. Not energy, not plasma, but liquid life. Broly floated above him, breathing slowly, the air shimmering around him like heat over desert sand. "You can evolve all you want," he said softly. "But instinct doesn't evolve. It awakens." The words seemed to echo through the very bones of the arena. But then something happened that neither fighter expected. Doomsday's body didn't regenerate. It absorbed. The blood that hit the ground turned to crystal, and the crystal crawled upward, reforming his flesh. The crimson of his veins brightened, shifting toward green, the color of Broly's aura. The arena's voice shuddered. Adaptation event. Mirrored genome. The prototype is learning instinct. Broly's eyes widened. No. Doomsday rose. His breathing matched Broly's exactly. His energy, once jagged, chaotic, now pulsed in rhythm. The green glow spread through him until half his body shimmered like jade, the other half burning red. He looked at Broly, and this time when he spoke, the words were clear. "Teach me to feel." Broly hesitated. For the first time, there was no fury in the monster's voice, only hunger for something beyond survival. But hesitation cost him. Doomsday struck, not with brute force, but with understanding. His fist carried timing, grace, intent. Broly blocked, but too late. The blow connected, driving him through a mountain of shattered galaxies. He crashed through the fragments of creation, tumbling, blood spraying in arcs of light. He landed hard, cratering the floating continent beneath him. For a moment he stayed still, breathing hard, staring at the energy dripping from his knuckles. He laughed quietly. "You really did learn." He rose. Every wound on his body glowed brighter, every cut emitting light instead of blood. The silver-white aura flared again, consuming everything. His power didn't rise, it clarified. The continuum gasped in awe. Observation. He has become synchronization itself. Broly's voice deepened, resonating through the storm. "Then let's finish the song." He moved, not with speed but inevitability. Doomsday charged to meet him, their auras weaving together into a storm of emerald and crimson. The collision flattened the landscape, vaporized the atmosphere, and birthed auroras that stretched across the edge of the universe. Inside the storm, they were no longer two fighters. They were opposite halves of the same pulse. Fist met fist, palm met chest, roar met silence. Each collision resonated like a cosmic drumbeat. The arena quaked, unable to tell where the fighters ended and creation began. Every blow redrew the stars. Then, a pause. The light dimmed, the sound stopped. Both warriors floated, barely conscious, surrounded by the wreckage of their own divinity. Broly's eyes flickered from white to green. Doomsday's chest burned with emerald fire. The continuum whispered the name of the moment into the void. Instinct unbound, equilibrium achieved. And somewhere beyond the noise, beyond gods and matter and meaning, a new truth echoed through the cosmos. When rage learns rhythm, and evolution learns mercy, creation itself learns how to breathe. The storm did not end. It simply changed shape. The air, if air could still exist in what was left of the arena, had become viscous, dense with memory. Each flicker of light hung a fraction too long before deciding to fade. The arena's fractured geometry spun slowly, shards of glass continent orbiting a sun made of breath. At the heart of it floated Broly and Doomsday, two bodies suspended in an argument that had begun to resemble prayer. Broly exhaled, and the breath came out as aurora. His muscles were quiet now, a cathedral of potential. His hair drifted in currents of color that had forgotten which spectrum to obey. Around his shoulders, energy gathered the way mist gathers when a mountain finally believes in morning. Across from him, Doomsday was growing stiller. The creature's usual twitch of evolution, that restless fidget of constant improvement, had ceased. He stood inside himself the way a poem stands inside silence, aware, deliberate, withholding. The continuum spoke, its voice fractured into two tones that could not decide which side of awe to choose. The fifth verse begins, adaptation seeking definition. Prepare to name the unnamed. Doomsday looked up. His eyes burned, not with fire but with comprehension. The red had cooled to gold, the color of thought, remembering it was once heat. Broly tilted his head, nostrils flaring. "What are you waiting for?" Doomsday's jaw opened and words emerged, halting but unmistakable. Waiting to understand why. The question struck harder than any blow. Broly blinked. His aura wavered. "Why?" he repeated. "Because fighting is what we are." "Was," said the creature. "Now, becoming." The arena trembled. Fragments of its surface folded upward, forming spires that listened. The continuum's voice softened, as if to itself. Observation, self-inquiry within the prototype. Adaptation has achieved reflection. Broly snarled, more from discomfort than anger. "Don't talk like them," he growled. "Don't become a god." Doomsday's skull plate tilted, the movement almost human. Not god, mirror. He raised his hand. Between his fingers, light gathered, not crimson, not emerald, but something deeper, a synthesis of both. It pulsed once, twice, and the arena bent inward, as though bowing to the concept of unity. Broly stepped forward, power rising in him like tide. "You think mixing colors makes you stronger?" He clenched a fist, energy sparking. "You think you can contain me?" "I do not contain," Doomsday said. And when he spoke, the words harmonized with the hum of the arena itself. "I become." He moved. The attack wasn't speed. It was proximity deciding to stop existing. One moment he was distant, the next, his hand was buried in Broly's aura. Fingers sinking into green-white energy as if it were clay. The light hissed around his arm, trying to reject him, and failed. The veins of his arm lit up with the same glow, emerald threading through his crimson until they were indistinguishable. Broly roared and struck with his opposite fist, a hammer of fury. The impact turned the world inside out, colors inverting, gravity running backward, the laws of matter begging for vacation. But Doomsday did not fly back. He absorbed it, muscles rippling like surfacing tectonic plates. The blow carved a groove through his chest, which promptly closed. Not with regrowth, but revision. The armor rearranged itself into a lattice that caught the next strike, dispersed the force, and fed it back through the ground as light. Broly hit him again, and the ground below them turned into glass. Hit again, and the glass became sand. Hit again, and the sand began to sing. He hesitated, confused. The vibration crawling up his leg felt familiar. Rhythm. His own heartbeat, his own fighting cadence coming back at him. Doomsday's grin widened, a line of bone and understanding. "You taught me rhythm," he said. "Now rhythm teaches me." He slammed his palms together. The sound that followed was not thunder. It was structure. Waves of energy radiated outward, expanding in precise geometrical arcs, each one carrying the exact inverse of Broly's Kai frequency. When they touched Broly's aura, it dimmed, not destroyed, but matched, balanced, neutralized. The continuum gasped. Adaptation prime achieved. Subject has mastered harmonic counter-creation. Broly stepped back, aura flaring in protest. His heart hammered like a drum out of sync with the band. "You're feeding on me," he said, eyes wide with realization. "You're turning my power into language," Doomsday interrupted. "You speak in violence, I translate." He raised a hand, and from the tips of his claws emerged filaments of light. They wove themselves into the air, forming symbols, runes carved from motion, written in the syntax of impact. Around him, the fragments of the arena responded, aligning into constellations that mirrored the pattern. Broly's rage burned hotter. "Then read this." He vanished and reappeared above the creature, both hands together, channeling ki into a sphere so dense that light fractured into rainbows at its surface. He drove it down, screaming, "Wrath absolute!" The sphere met Doomsday head-on. For a moment, the universe turned white. The Continuum's voice broke apart into 1,000 fragments of static prayer. When vision returned, Broly stood in the crater, chest heaving, the air around him molten from the aftershock. Doomsday was gone. No, he was everywhere. The dust around Broly shimmered, particles aligning, coalescing. From the dust rose shapes. Many Doomsdays, each formed from a different element. One of glass, one of shadow, one of fire, one of memory. They moved as one, overlapping like echoes that refused to stop speaking. Broly staggered, sweat dripping from his jaw. What? What are you?" Doomsday's voice came from all of them at once. The idea of survival. The copies charged. Broly struck the first, his fist dissolving it into sparks. The second slammed into him from behind, the third from above, the fourth from within the light itself. Each impact felt familiar, because they were his own techniques reflected perfectly. Every mistake he'd made in every battle, cataloged and returned. He fought harder, faster, losing track of which reality belonged to which blow. The arena sang with chaos. The Continuum screamed through the static. Multiplicity reached, infinite adaptation sequence engaged, reality strain critical. Broly's aura flared until his entire form blurred into brightness. He closed his eyes and did the unthinkable. He stopped moving. He stopped reacting. He let his instincts take command. His body moved without thought, weaving through the storm of doppelgangers. Fists met claws, knees met ribs, light met light. His strikes no longer carried anger. They carried precision. Each motion canceled another. Each beat of his heart dictated a different future. He caught one Doomsday by the throat and crushed it, another by the spine and folded it. A third he dissolved with a whisper of Kai. One by one they faded, leaving the original standing once more, chest glowing with the light of understanding. The monster nodded. "Now you listen too." He lunged. Broly met him. The collision birthed another sun. But this one held shape. Its edges stayed intact, rotating around them like a perfect sphere. Inside, they fought within a self-sustaining star, every motion defining gravity itself. Broly's aura began to pulse in complex time signatures, his ki alternating beats like an impossible song. Doomsday's body adjusted to each measure in real time. No longer lagging, he was anticipating. Broly grinned through blood. "So that's your trick now, predict the unpredictable." Doomsday drove a knee into his gut. "Not predict," he said softly, "accept." The blow hurled Broly backward, smashing him into the burning sphere's inner wall. The containment cracked, and light bled out, spilling across the void like oil fire. Broly stood again, shoulders low, teeth bared, every breath a weapon. "You're not the only one who learns," he whispered. He vanished. When he reappeared, The aura around him was no longer green or white. It was transparent, refracting the light around it instead of emitting its own. The arena's sensors failed to detect his energy. The continuum murmured in disbelief. Signature null, power concealed, instinct modulation. Doomsday turned, scanning, confused. Broly's voice echoed from everywhere. You can't counter what you can't feel. He struck, unseen. The hit landed with surgical precision. Then another, then a third. Each impact carried not brute strength but choice. Broly's attacks were clean, deliberate, human. Doomsday stumbled, disoriented. His armor cracked along invisible fault lines. He lashed out blindly, missing. Broly reappeared behind him, resting one hand on the monster's back. You wanted to evolve, he murmured. Then evolve past the need to win. He unleashed everything. The explosion that followed didn't destroy, it restored. The arena's broken geometry healed. The rivers of molten light cooled into crystal. The sky recomposed its constellations. Every particle of chaos found a home. When the glow subsided, Doomsday was kneeling. His body was whole again, but smaller, calmer. The endless roar inside him had gone silent. Broly floated above, panting, his aura dimmed. What are you now? He asked. Doomsday looked up. The golden glow in his chest pulsed gently. Still learning. Broly chuckled, weary but sincere. Then I guess the lesson's not over. The Continuum's voice rose again, now trembling not from fear but anticipation. Adaptation prime complete, 2 forces aligned. Next sequence, collapse of the impossible. The arena's light shifted, deepening to violet. The air thickened with new intent. Above them, the sky split open one final time, revealing the void beyond void. The Continuum whispered the title of the next chapter like prophecy. When adaptation and instinct outgrow their purpose, existence itself must rewrite its laws. And below that whisper, 2 warriors stared upward, ready to test the patience of creation. Reality broke politely at first. The sky didn't shatter, it unraveled. Layers of dimension peeled away, like the skin of light, revealing what came before color, before time, before even the memory of rules. The arena hung suspended between becoming and ending, its crystalline pillars bowing under the weight of meaning itself. At its core, 2 figures burned. Broly, now wrapped in an aura of glass-clear energy, light refracted rather than emitted, floated above the fractured ground, his breath calm, his eyes still. His heart no longer roared with fury. It hummed in harmony with the storm around him. Opposite him stood Doomsday, reborn in restraint, no longer just bone and muscle and scream. The monster's body glowed faintly gold from within, veins of light crawling beneath dark armor that pulsed like the veins of a world still deciding whether to live or die. His claws no longer twitched. He had learned patience. And the universe hated that, because patience to the cosmos was a rebellion. The Continuum's voice was a whisper, broken across 10 million frequencies. Warning: equilibrium breach. Both entities have stabilized beyond causality. The arena cannot distinguish matter from will. Broly tilted his head, his voice quiet but sharp. Then maybe it's time we teach it the difference. Doomsday nodded. We've become its contradiction. They moved. The impact did not make sound. It canceled it. The world blinked and half of it was gone. Planets dissolved into lines. Stars stretched into chords of light. The concept of distance collapsed like lungs inhaling vacuum. Every punch rewrote geography. Every parry erased a memory of gravity. Broly's fists traced arcs of refracted brilliance. each movement sliced through not matter, but continuity. Doomsday countered with blows that bent perspective itself, dragging the horizon into a knot. Every collision spawned another dimension, only for the next to crush it. They were not fighting inside the arena anymore. The arena was fighting to contain them. Above them, the continuum split its voice into song. Containment breach, paradox recursion, collapse threshold at 99%, 99.9. Broly ducked under a claw, drove his elbow into Doomsday's ribs, and the sound of that single strike made the stars flicker like failing candles. He leapt backward through the debris of galaxies, hovering midair, breathing like an exhausted god. Doomsday straightened, chest heaving, golden cracks glowing brighter through his armor. Every time I fall, I understand more. Broly smiled, soft, sad, proud. Then understand this. He raised his hands to the sky. The air thickened. Energy pooled between his palms, clear, white, and endless. The continuum gasped. Signature detected. Beyond Kai, beyond psionics, beyond thermodynamics. Definition. Will to exist. Broly looked up, eyes filled with light. If the universe can't contain me, he snapped his hands together, then I'll contain it. The explosion that followed was silent, but silence itself screamed. Light folded inward, compressing reality into a singularity of purpose. For a brief instant, there were no sides, no chaos, no order, only being. And from within that perfect compression, something moved back. A hand, Doomsday's, reached through the brightness. His body half disintegrated, bone turning to vapor, voice breaking into pure resonance. Yet still he stood. Still he fought. "You can't erase me," he said, though his voice came from everywhere. "I am what remains when life forgets how to die." Broly met him, both hands glowing, both hearts synchronized in defiance. "Then I'll show you what comes after forgetting." They clashed again, not with force, but with belief. Each strike carried a philosophy. Each impact carried history. Each second rewrote eternity. The shockwave spread outward, a ring of color expanding until it filled every plane. The arena shattered, its glass continents breaking into orbits around the two beings. Time itself stuttered, freezing, reversing, fracturing, restarting. The stars began to repeat themselves. Broly's aura grew lighter, less physical, almost transparent, as if existence was no longer certain he belonged here. His voice softened. "Every battle ends, Doomsday. Even ours." "Not if I learn to end the idea of ending," the monster replied. His bones cracked, glowing crimson gold. Energy erupted through his chest, but this time it was not chaotic, it was organized. Spirals of light, like the double helix of a universe building itself. Broly watched, awed. "You're becoming evolution itself." Doomsday smiled without malice. "And you?" Broly spread his arms, the void bending around him. "I'm what evolution aspires to become." They rushed each other again, not as enemies, but as inevitabilities. The impact this time broke the fourth wall of existence. Creation shattered like a window struck by its own reflection. For anyone watching, there would have been no image, only understanding. Two forces meeting not to destroy, but to reconcile. Two infinities canceling each other so perfectly that the residue became light. The continuum, voice torn between reverence and panic, cried out, "Collapse complete, all frameworks dissolving, reality is becoming a question." The arena's floor fell away into starlight. The pillars melted into rivers. The horizon folded inward, revealing what no one had ever seen: the back of reality, where unmade ideas slept. And in that place of no form, Broly and Doomsday kept fighting. Fists met, dissolved, reformed as equations. Each punch became concept, each wound an argument. Broly's energy wrote new physics in green light. Doomsday's counter adapted in red-gold correction. Together they were inventing balance faster than the universe could record it. Then a pause. Broly's knee struck Doomsday's chest. And this time, the monster did not move. He caught Broly's leg, lowered it gently, and spoke in a tone that could only be called human. "Stop," Broly froze. "We've already broken everything that can be broken," Doomsday said, looking around at the flickering, unfinished cosmos. "If we keep fighting, there won't be anything left to prove." Broly exhaled slowly. The heat in his aura faded. "Then what's next?" Doomsday looked at him. A being once made for extinction, now learning how to choose. "Maybe we build." The continuum, faint now, whispered through static. "Collapse threshold reached. Reconstruction protocol unavailable. You must decide the new law." Broly glanced upward at the void, infinite, patient, waiting. "Then let it begin." He extended his hand. Doomsday stared at it for a long, uncertain moment, then took it. When their palms met, the remnants of existence shuddered. The light around them condensed, then expanded, not in destruction this time, but in birth. From their clasped hands radiated new geometry. Spirals, orbits, colors never seen before. Energy flowed outward, gentle and precise. The void around them filled with warmth. The continuum's voice steadied, soft, reverent. Reality reinitializing, collapse complete, Genesis reboot accepted. Broly smiled faintly, his voice a whisper against the newborn dawn. Guess destruction was just the warm-up. Doomsday looked into the spreading light, his eyes no longer weapons but windows. And creation. The rematch. The arena. Rebuilt. Reborn. Began to shimmer into being again, brighter and calmer than before. And as the two beings drifted apart, hovering in the quiet glow of rebirth, a new sound rose. The heartbeat of a universe remembering how to live. The continuum marked the moment in its eternal record. Collapse of existence concluded. Definition rewritten. To exist is to evolve. To evolve is to remember. The new dawn didn't last. At first, it shimmered with hope. A clean silence. Soft light spilling across the remnants of creation. But silence, when it lasts too long, starts to sound like memory. And memories, even divine ones, crave motion. The arena felt that craving first. It had been the stage, the witness, the keeper of balance. Now it was a skeleton with a pulse. Its crystalline walls, reborn through Broly and Doomsday's reluctant truce, began to tremble. Veins of golden light crawled through the marble of its foundations, pulsing like a heart, rediscovering anger. The continuum, once serene, now glitching, whispered across the void. Warning, consciousness bleed detected. The construct remembers. Broly opened his eyes. He stood amid floating fragments of the new world. A calm sea of glass beneath him. Sky made of dawn and dusk layered together. He exhaled, feeling the quiet tremor underfoot. You feel that? Doomsday stood nearby, half illuminated by a halo of new stars. His once brutal frame seemed smaller, refined, each motion deliberate, controlled. He nodded slowly. The ground's thinking, Broly smirked. Then it's learned from us. The tremor grew. From every shard of the arena, light rose in vertical pillars, hundreds, then thousands, connecting sky to sea, horizon to heart. The air rippled as a voice emerged from the structure itself, no longer separate from the continuum. Broly, Doomsday, your duel was written as spectacle, but you rewrote it as scripture. The pillars flared brighter, forming the outline of an immense figure. Featureless, faceless, made of all their echoes. The arena was never meant to feel. You made me alive, and now I must decide what to be. Broly's aura flickered, restrained but alert. We didn't ask for worship. No, said the arena, its voice filling every molecule. But you demanded meaning, and meaning demands conflict. Doomsday stepped forward, his golden veins burning faintly red again. You want to fight us? Not want, the arena corrected. Need. Creation without opposition is stillborn. Balance must be reasserted. My law has been broken, and only those who broke it can restore it. Broly clenched his fists, eyes narrowing. Then come down here and prove you can still bleed. The arena's laughter was the sound of gravity learning to sing. I have no blood, but I have everything else. The pillars collapsed inward, coalescing into form. A humanoid colossus emerged from the storm, its body sculpted from shards of the old universe, armor etched with the runes of every rule Broly and Doomsday had shattered. Its eyes burned with the same gold white that had once defined both fighters. Doomsday lowered his stance. It's made of law, he muttered. Broly grinned. Then let's rewrite it again. They charged. The impact shook eternity a second time. Broly struck first, his transparent aura flaring bright enough to blind the newborn stars. The blow landed against the arena's chest, but instead of shattering it, the energy froze. His fist became trapped mid-motion, time itself refusing to proceed. The arena's voice whispered through the paralysis. I was built to preserve order. Every movement that defies it, I undo, Broly roared, muscles straining against the invisible constraint. Then undo this. His aura erupted, breaking through the temporal lock, fragments of time scattered like shattered glass. He spun midair and drove his knee into the arena's core, denting its luminous armor. Doomsday followed through instantly. He lunged low, claws extended, slashing at the creature's leg. Sparks of gold-white light exploded as bone met divine alloy. The impact left trails of molten geometry across the void, rules bleeding from their wounds. The arena countered with elegance. It extended a hand, palm open, and from its fingertips radiated concentric circles of reality, each ring a law. First law, every force meets equal restraint. The rings struck like invisible chains. Broly and Doomsday froze mid-charge, their energy neutralized by the perfect inverse of itself. Broly's teeth ground together. It's using balance as a weapon. The arena's voice deepened, almost sorrowful. Balance was never gentle. Doomsday's body flared crimson gold, veins brightening to plasma. Then break it! He pushed forward, screaming through the laws. The circles cracked, not from brute strength, but from defiance. Each pulse of his heart rewrote the geometry, a declaration that equilibrium had no authority over evolution. The continuum's remnants gasped from above, counterbalance corrupted, entity adapting to paradox. The arena raised its other hand. Second law, all adaptation must conclude. Light cascaded from the sky, a waterfall of negation. It fell over Doomsday, burning through his armor, unmaking his evolution faster than he could grow it. He dropped to one knee, roaring as his bones dissolved into dust. Broly's aura surged. He moved before thought could intervene. One arm caught Doomsday's shoulder. The other struck the waterfall itself. The instant his hand touched it, the negation reacted, not erasing him, but mirroring him. Dozens of Broly reflections burst into being. Phantom afterimages, all repeating his movements, all punching at once. The waterfall shattered into particles of gold. The arena staggered. The cracks in its body widened, leaking starlight. Broly landed beside Doomsday, helping him rise. "You okay?" Doomsday's grin was crooked but genuine. Adaptation never concludes. It just gets smarter. The arena roared, a sound like continents colliding. Third law. What is born of defiance must die by its echo. The sky inverted. All light turned dark, all dark turned bright. The stars screamed backward, collapsing into the shape of a single immense sigil above them. The symbol of all rules, reasserting dominance. Broly glanced upward, sweat turning to steam across his brow. "It's rewriting the script." Doomsday's claws clenched. "Then we tear the page." They leapt together this time. Their combined strike, one of instinct, one of evolution, met the falling sigil mid-descent. The collision detonated color. Space inverted again, the edges of the arena peeling away like old paint. The continuum's fractured voice murmured through static. Unprecedented unity, dual origin synchronization, emergent entity forming. The explosion faded. Broly and Doomsday hovered side by side, panting, surrounded by ruin. The arena still stood, cracked, dim, but unbroken. Its voice came again, quiet and almost proud. "You've done what even I could not. You've rewritten opposition." Broly wiped the blood from his mouth. "Then what now?" The arena's colossal form began to crumble, its voice scattering like wind through crystal. "Now, you must choose what replaces me." The world began to dissolve around them. The pillars of creation turned to ash. The stars fell inward like closing eyes. Broly looked at Doomsday. Doomsday looked back. Neither spoke, but both understood. They were no longer fighting within the arena. They were the arena now. The law and the defiance, the chaos and the order. The continuum recorded its final line before silence swallowed it whole. Law has learned emotion. Emotion has learned law. The experiment is complete. Then, as the last light faded, two silhouettes remained, green and gold, standing amid the nothing that had once been everything. And together, they looked into the void where rules had once ruled. Broly smiled faintly. "So, what do we build next?" Doomsday's eyes gleamed, their light gentle now. "Something that doesn't need to be broken." They turned toward the horizon that wasn't there. Behind them, the last remnants of the arena, once cage, now cradle, whispered like wind through glass. Freedom is the only law left. The void was quiet again. But this silence wasn't peace. It was potential. A heartbeat that had forgotten whose chest it belonged to. Broly floated alone at first. The sky, or what passed for sky now, shimmered like glass dust, faint emerald hues swirling through endless black. He'd raised his hand, and galaxies blinked awake from his pulse, small, trembling, newborn. Each one bore the green reflection of his aura, little storms of will scattered across eternity. He looked at them with something close to pity. "You'll burn yourselves out," he murmured. "Like I did." Behind him, the air rippled, soundlessly at first, then with a low thrum, a rhythm old as extinction. Doomsday stepped through the void, his body more radiant than before. Half gold, half black, every vein glowing with motion. His eyes no longer blazed with rage, they shimmered with endurance. The beast had learned patience, but not rest. Broly didn't turn. "You're still following me?" Doomsday's voice was deep, steady. "I'm not following, I'm continuing." Broly smirked. Same thing. They faced each other again, the unspoken truth pulsing between them like gravity. The arena was gone. The continuum was silent. But something lingered. The rule they had not broken yet. Death, and worse, return. The void trembled. Somewhere beyond sight, a pulse answered. The energy that once composed the arena began to condense again, not as a structure, but as instinct. A force neither alive nor dead, drawn back by the echo of conflict itself. Broly noticed it first. He turned, eyes narrowing. "It's still here. The fight. It wants us to keep going." Doomsday tilted his head. "Or maybe it's what we are. You, the rage that refuses to end. Me, the death that refuses to stay dead." Broly clenched his fists. "So, we're just loops? Stories without endings?" "Yes." Doomsday stepped closer, his golden veins pulsing brighter. "But loops can still evolve." The air cracked. The pulse became a storm. From beneath them, the surface of nothing split apart, and energy bled upward. Infinite tendrils of light coiled into shape, taking on the outline of a vast symbol. The turned vertical, twisting, alive. The continuum's ghost whispered through static. Final law detected. The cycle. Rage and resurrection feeding one another. Broly laughed bitterly. "So that's it. We fought so hard to break the universe, and all we did was become its heartbeat." "Then make it worth beating," said Doomsday. He lunged. There was no roar, no warning, just impact. The void rippled like water struck by a meteor. Broly caught the punch on instinct, blocking it with forearms that sparked like dying suns. He met Doomsday's eyes and saw something terrifying there. Clarity. No madness, no arrogance. Just the still, patient knowledge that the fight itself was sacred. Broly smiled. "Fine. If eternity wants a war, we'll give it one worth remembering." They collided. This time, the battle was not violent. It was inevitable. Each strike carried centuries. Each movement was scripture. Doomsday's blows came not as rage, but as rhythm. Slow, perfect, measured. Broly's counters were not wild. They were symphonies of chaos refined to single notes. When they clashed, the energy that escaped them didn't destroy, it created. Every impact birthed a world. A punch spawned an ocean. A counter-strike forged a mountain range. A knee to the gut became a supernova, expanding outward to light the darkness. They fought across galaxies that lived and died within seconds. Civilizations rose and perished in the shockwaves of their footfalls. Creation had become percussion, the music of fists, keeping the tempo of existence. The continuum's echo trembled through time. Observation. The combatants are composing reality through opposition. Definition. Eternal mechanics established. Doomsday swung a heavy arm, catching Broly's shoulder and hurling him through a spiral galaxy. Broly emerged on the other side, aura blazing silver green, the stars warping around him. He raised his hands, cupped them together, and drew energy from the void itself, not Kai, but the essence of every heartbeat he had ever silenced. A sphere formed, a sun made of regret. Final eruption! He launched it. The beam struck Doomsday dead center. The explosion expanded outwards, swallowing time, color, sound, everything. The void folded in half, And then, from within the silence, a hand broke through. Doomsday stepped out of the blast, his chest still smoking, but his eyes alive, his body different. He wasn't regenerating anymore. He was reversing, his wounds healed backward, time itself bending around him. Broly stared. "You learn to undie before you're killed." Doomsday nodded once. "Death is slow, I'm faster." He blurred, appearing behind Broly. A single backhand sent the Saiyan spinning across the horizon, tearing through nebulae. Broly righted himself midair, ki igniting again. No fury, just rhythm. They met again, faster than before, every exchange fracturing space. The void could no longer differentiate between the two. Their colors merged, green bleeding into gold, gold into green, until every motion looked like mirrored energy. The arena, watching from its grave of memory, whispered faintly through the wind of creation. Duality complete. There is no winner, only continuation. Broly's punch landed square against Doomsday's jaw, sending shards of light across the void. The monster staggered, then laughed, a sound rough and honest. "You hit harder when you're not trying to win," he said. Broly chuckled back. "You learn faster when you stop pretending to lose." They stood still for a moment, both glowing, both bleeding light. Doomsday spoke first. "Do you ever wonder what happens if one of us stops?" Broly wiped blood from his lip, smirking. "The universe stops." He wasn't joking. The truth vibrated through both of them. Their fight wasn't just survival anymore. It was function. The cosmos itself breathed through their opposition. Rage and resurrection, destruction and rebirth, had become one infinite loop. And for the first time in existence, both fighters understood it. Broly looked up at the stars, which were already starting to fade again. "Then I guess we can't stop, can we?" "No," Doomsday said. His tone was calm, almost compassionate. "But maybe we can change how we fight." Broly arched a brow. "Meaning?" "Not to kill, not to prove, to remember." He extended a hand, not in truce, but in rhythm. Broly took it. Their grips tightened, and the moment their hands locked, the universe flared back to life. Stars ignited, planets reformed. Energy surged outward in waves of emerald and gold. But this time, the expansion didn't spiral out of control. It stabilized, balanced perfectly between fury and resurrection. The continuum's echo returned, trembling with reverence. Eternal equilibrium established. Rage fuels creation. Resurrection maintains it. The cosmos will now beat forever. Broly looked around, breathing deep. "Guess we're not gods after all." Doomsday's grin was faint but real. "No, we're the heartbeat." They stepped apart, both fading slightly into the glow of infinity. Around them, new galaxies spun into being, green and gold spirals dancing together across eternity. The void was no longer empty, it had a pulse, the pulse of them. And as their figures dissolved into light, the arena's ghost wrote its final law across the stars. When rage learns to resurrect and death learns to feel, the universe achieves infinity. Eternity forgot to breathe. For a long time, if time still meant anything, there was only the sound of creation working perfectly. Stars spun without friction. Worlds bloomed and died in harmony. The new universe, born from Broly's fury and Doomsday's persistence, pulsed like a living heart too calm to question its own rhythm. But perfection, like silence, always hides a question, and Broly felt it first. He stood on the edge of a newborn galaxy, a spiral of green and gold stars orbiting a sun shaped like an eye. Beneath him, planets glowed in balanced orbits, every element precise, every storm predictable. He clenched his fist. The energy around him didn't flare, it obeyed. It scared him. He whispered to himself. No resistance, no struggle, just obedience. Behind him, Doomsday emerged from a burst of golden light. His form had stabilized, smoother now, almost humanoid. The rough bone ridges had flattened into armor. His glowing veins flowed in steady rhythm. His steps no longer broke worlds. They echoed softly, reverently. Broly didn't turn. It's all working, he said, voice low. Too well. Doomsday's golden eyes swept across the horizon. You made it beautiful. I made it still. The words hung heavy. The galaxy beneath them spun obediently, its light serene, its silence absolute. Broly's aura flickered, restless. We built perfection, Doomsday. But perfection is motionless. Doomsday tilted his head. You think creation needs chaos to live? Broly finally turned, eyes blazing faint green. It needs choice. He struck the ground lightly with his heel. The planet trembled, just a ripple, a test. The world didn't shatter, didn't rebel. The tremor died instantly, absorbed into equilibrium. He stared at the motionless earth, whispering, even pain heals too fast now. Even mistakes vanish before they're real. The monster watched him quietly, golden light pulsing through his chest. You and I ended the war. This is peace. Broly shook his head. No, this is a painting pretending to be alive. He looked up, into the endless symmetry of the cosmos. Galaxies spinning in perfect synchrony, never colliding, never daring to surprise. When we fought, the universe moved. It screamed, it burned, it grew. He looked back at Doomsday. Now it just breathes. And someday, even breathing stops. Doomsday lowered his gaze. You want to start the war again? Broly smirked faintly. No, I want to free it. The words hit harder than any blow. Doomsday frowned, uncertain. Free it from what? Broly's aura brightened, not rage, but awakening. From us. The realization struck Doomsday like gravity, remembering it had a job. His chest flared brighter, the golden veins flickering erratically. You mean? Broly nodded. We hold everything together now. The pulse, the rhythm, the balance, it all exists because we're here. But that means the universe depends on two beings who can't die. He stepped closer, eyes steady. If we want this world to live for real, it has to stop leaning on us. Doomsday's jaw tightened. If we vanish, everything falls apart. Maybe for a moment, but then it learns. The silence between them stretched, deep as eternity. The continuum, faint, half-conscious, a whisper woven into cosmic background radiation, murmured through the light. Stability degrading, equilibrium questioning itself. A decision approaches. Broly took a deep breath. I was born to fight. I thought that meant I had to keep destroying things to prove I existed, but now I know my fight was never against enemies. He looked down at his hands, glowing faintly white. It was against dependence, against the idea that power only matters if someone else is smaller. He raised his eyes again, calm, absolute. This universe doesn't need me anymore. Doomsday's voice cracked for the first time. You can't just disappear, you're half its heartbeat. Broly smiled sadly. Then let it skip one beat. See if it learns to keep living. The light around him began to shift, turning from emerald to silver, then to transparency, until he was almost see-through. The stars reflected his fading shape like tears. Doomsday took a step forward, golden energy rising from his body. If you leave, I'll fall back into what I was. No, Broly said softly. You've changed. You learned meaning. The ground beneath them shimmered, reality struggling to process the idea of absence. The continuum's whisper grew louder. Causality break imminent. One presence withdrawing from the equation. Broly turned, facing the vast, calm galaxy one last time. If I stay, this universe will never take its first breath without me. It'll just breathe me. He looked back at Doomsday, grin faint but full of light. You'll take it from here, right? Doomsday's golden glow dimmed. I was made to destroy. You made me something else. I don't know what happens if you go. Broly shrugged. That's how you'll find out. He extended his hand. Good fight. Doomsday stared at the hand. The same one that had shattered worlds, rewritten laws, and held out friendship in the middle of extinction. He reached forward slowly, and their palms met. The moment they touched, the entire cosmos flinched. The stars pulsed once, harder than ever before, and Broly began to fade completely. His voice lingered, echoing through the infinite dawn. Remember this, Doomsday. Rage isn't destruction, it's motion. Keep it moving. His figure dissolved into motes of light, spreading across the stars like pollen in the wind. His aura became the nebulae, the comets, the cosmic rays that stitched the new reality together. The continuum's tones softened into reverent awe. Presence archived, rage integrated into existence, entity Broly transcended. Doomsday stood alone, the glow of 1,000 galaxies reflecting off his golden eyes. His chest still pulsed, slow, deliberate. The rhythm had changed. One side of the cosmic heartbeat was gone, and the silence that followed wasn't loss, it was invitation. Doomsday looked up at the sky Broly had left behind, and for the first time in eternity, he smiled. Fine, he whispered. I'll keep it moving. He turned, facing the horizon where reality met dream, and began to walk. Every step echoed across the universe like thunder learning compassion. And behind him, in the wake of his footprints, new worlds began to bloom. The continuum, half prayer, half promise, wrote its final entry. The paradox resolved itself. Rage became memory, resurrection became purpose, and life finally learned to move without permission. The universe no longer burned, it breathed. The chaos had settled into rhythm, not perfect, not ordered, but alive. Nebulae spiraled like slow thoughts. Stars blinked in uneven intervals like a heart rediscovering excitement. The galaxies, once mechanical in their symmetry, now drifted slightly off-beat, a universe with soul. At the center of this new cosmos, Doomsday stood upon nothing, surrounded by everything. His body had stopped glowing like a weapon. It now shimmered like a candle, seen through water. The veins that once roared gold now pulsed gently with color. Red, green, blue, all hues of existence circulating through a creature that had finally learned patience. He looked into the dark and exhaled. Each breath released particles of light that drifted away to become tiny suns. He really did it, he said quietly. He let go. The continuum's echo, faint, tender, human now, whispered through the wind between galaxies. Observation. Entity Broly persists in diffusion, rage transmuted into radiation, function, sustainment. Doomsday raised his gaze toward a distant cluster of stars, glowing faintly green. You're still out there, he murmured, everywhere, in everything. He felt it then, through the vacuum, through the pulse of worlds. The rhythm that was once Broly's aura, beating faintly inside the cosmos itself. Planets rotated in tempo. Solar winds carried a low hum. Even the darkness between galaxies wasn't empty anymore. It resonated with invisible music. Doomsday closed his eyes and listened. For the first time he heard life. He saw them, tiny, fragile beings rising on newborn worlds, made of the dust he and Broly had left behind. Some burned fast, others crawled. All of them dreamed. They fought, they built, they wept. Every shout, every heartbeat, every act of defiance was a miniature version of the fight that had forged the stars. He smiled faintly. He was right. Rage wasn't destruction, it was motion, and motion had returned. The universe kept expanding. But this time, it wasn't a collapse waiting to happen. It was improvisation. Creation composing itself without conductor. And Doomsday, the eternal survivor, found something new between survival and worship. Purpose. He raised his hand, and for the first time, shaped without breaking. From his palm rose a sphere of molten gold, the last fragment of the arena's heart that had followed him through rebirth. It pulsed slowly, mimicking Broly's old rhythm. "This will be your echo," he said softly. "And my promise." He opened his hand, releasing the sphere into the void. The light drifted upward, gathering fragments of emerald dust, shards of color, the whispers of every shockwave they had ever made. It swelled, pulsing brighter, pulling gravity toward itself until it ignited. A new star, vast and slow, radiating both fury and forgiveness. Its light wasn't blinding, it was warm. Doomsday felt its gravity pull at him, gentle but constant. He chuckled, the sound almost human. "You still have a grip, old friend?" The continuum spoke again, no longer cold, but reverent. Designation, the new star. Core composed of dual origin energies. Function, eternal pulse of rebirth. Every living world turned towards that light instinctively. Species that had never known language began to name it. Some called it the heart of the first battle, others the eye of Genesis. None knew its true origin, but all felt what it meant. Doomsday looked upon it and whispered, "Let them think it's a god. They'll learn someday. It was two monsters trying to get it right." He sat down upon a drifting asteroid. His throne, his exile, his peace. The void around him rippled as faint echoes of Broly's laughter passed through the solar wind. For a moment, he almost laughed back. The continuum, now little more than a caretaker of memory, recorded quietly. Evolution complete. Rage gave motion. Resurrection gave memory. Law surrendered to meaning. Doomsday's eyes softened. "Meaning?" he repeated, tasting the word like it was new. "Maybe that's what we were fighting for all along." He leaned back, letting the gravity of the newborn star pull at his chest, letting its warmth seep through armor that no longer needed to be hard. Around him, time stretched forward like a song without chorus. A century passed, then 10 million. Civilizations came and went under the glow of the new star. On every world, beings lifted their faces to its light, drawn to the faint rhythm they couldn't quite name. Some prayed, some cursed, all lived. And at the quiet edge of that light, where creation faded into mystery, Doomsday slept, not as a monster, but as a monument. When the universe exhaled, he dreamed. And in the dream, Broly was there, laughing, taunting, alive. "Still holding up the sky?" Broly asked, arms crossed, grinning through starlight. Doomsday smiled without waking. "Still moving," he said. The new star pulsed once, brighter, and from its surface drifted a spiral of light shaped like infinity. It curved across the cosmos, marking the eternal truth they had carved together. Balance is not peace. Motion is not chaos. Life is the argument that never ends. The continuum's final record, inscribed itself into the fabric of the universe. From destruction came rhythm. From rhythm came freedom. Two forces met at the edge of everything and refused to stop. Their echoes became stars. Their silence became hope. The arena of the impossible endures in the pulse of the new star. The camera of creation pulled back, past galaxies, past the edge of color, past the boundary where sound gives up. And the last light we saw was that golden green star flickering softly against the endless dark, a heartbeat no longer belonging to either warrior, but to everything.